should I be, let me just see here. So hi guys, Fabio here from Functional Tennis. This is our third webinar and they're going great so far. Feedback's been great. I'm delighted to have Elena Sosa on this week's webinar, a sports psychologist who's worked with tennis players before, including Johanna Konta previously, and she went on a semi-final run at Wimbledon with Johanna. She's traveled with Johanna, so she's going to tell us a bit about that afterwards. But she's a great presentation. She's going to explain to me what sports psychology is all about and how it integrates with tennis players. And then we'll do a Q&A. Keen, our moderator here, will take your questions and he will ask Elena them. And yeah, that's it. Really looking forward to it. So let's just have Elena here. Hi, Elena. Are we good? Hello?
Just jump straight into it and Fabio will regain connection.
Okay,
Are we
so
good?
I'm going
Yeah.
to share my screen. All good. So, well, as you know, today is sports psychology on and off the court. I want to give just a clear and simple idea of what we do. Sports psychology is how do we work with tennis players and coaches and parents and all the people that are around. So it's going to last around 30 minutes, I guess, and then I will be more than happy to answer all the questions that you may have. So first of all, the big question is like, what is sports psychology, right? Sometimes I hear people like, oh, that's therapy, or that's counseling, or what do you guys do? So I took this definition from the American Psychology Association, which explains a little bit what is sports psychology. So it's a proficiency that uses psychological knowledge and skills to address optimal performance and well-being of athletes. I want to stay with that part because I think it's important that we focus on that, on the optimal performance and well-being of athletes. There are other areas of psychology, which is clinical psychology and sports psychiatry, which are also areas where the athlete can also work with. As you know, mental health is now, we are hearing a lot about mental health, what athletes that they have depression, or they have eating disorders, or they have high levels of anxiety, or they're dwelling I don't know, different areas that are outside the sport and are really affecting their performance. So then is when we refer to these colleagues so they can work on that area as well. Another question is, who do we work with, right? It's like people think that, oh, we only work with athletes, but we work with loads of people, not only the athletes. So obviously the athlete here is in the middle of everything. And at the beginning, most of the time, works only with one coach, sometimes more than one, and the parents. So for me, and from the sports psychology perspective, this triangle is key. It's very important to have a really good connection between them, good communication and same message. Because sometimes I've seen a coach saying something on court to the athlete, and then the parent, when they go home, telling a totally different story, because sometimes they don't really believe on the coach. They can have some doubts, or they think that they know more about the sport. And then what happens here, that the athlete can get a bit confused, and then they say, okay, who do I have to listen to? What do I need to do? And then it can lead to some type of doubts and confusion. So sports psychology also is when they work with the athlete, it's important that they help this relationship and help to that this communication is quite fluid. Here we have also other professionals that can work with the athlete. Normally they work later in their careers, not at the beginning. The nutritionist, a strength and conditioning coach, or the physio, sports psychology, or the agent. And we will do the same as sports psychologists. Sometimes we need to filter the noise. We need to help that the athlete has just the information that we believe is important for them. It can be filtered through the coach, or it can be filtered sometimes through the parents, or sometimes it can be filtered through the agent. So for example, if there is something that the strength and conditioning coach needs to tell the coach or the parent or the agent, we can skip the athlete because it's maybe not relevant for the athlete. So it's important to have this communication, and as I said, noise quite mild and not too noisy for the well-being of the athlete. What areas we can help? I think this is also a question that I had a lot, because most of the time a parent calls me and say, hey, my daughter or my son is getting upset on court, or is breaking rackets, or is crying, or cannot deal with stress. And that's kind of the only area that many people think we can help. So it's just when there is an emotional or behavior, or there's some kind of problem. But we do more than that, as you will be able to see. So for me, it's quite important that the first part, which is to understand who you are as an athlete, but most important, who you are as a person. The work that I'm going to talk also from my perspective on how do I work, because at the end we all have, the sports psychologists, we can have different styles or different ways or of approaching the same situation. But I think it's important to help the athlete and give them tools to know who they are inside and outside court. And so obviously we help them with the identity of how will they behave on court. But it's important to know who they are outside court, because sometimes they can lose that identity and they think that they are just a tennis player and that's it, and they don't know. And this is important, for example, for retirement, what's next, and even with just their confidence, right? So it's really, really key to work on their pillars of who they are as persons and athletes. Here, you will see that parents are part of this equation, because they are a very, very important one. They are not the coaches, they are not the psychologists, they are just the parents. And sometimes they need some reminders, or there's some tools to help them to deal with that. They are very important during the whole career of the athlete, and not only at the beginning. I work with professional players, and they still have their parents with them on an everyday basis. They go to their training sessions, they go to the tournaments, and it's key. And I don't know if, and I'm sure you related with this, all this Olympic ads, I think it's Nike that was doing about the parents, the role of the parent behind an athlete. They're very emotional, but at the same time they're very true, right? There is always a parent behind an athlete, taking them at the beginning to the tournaments, preparing their bags, and it's a lot of time and effort and sacrifice that they're due. And so it's important to really work good with the parents, to have a fluent communication, to identify their roles, also to know how they can help. Sometimes they don't know what to do, or they believe that they need to do something different, and the player can get more frustrated. And so it's important to have that relationship and communication very fluid and clean. As well with the coaches and the team further on their careers, further on the careers. To have, again, that good communication and fluent communication. Same sometimes, and this happens now more and more, the coach is from, let's say, Spain, and is working here in UK. Sometimes just, or with me, the accent that we may have, it can be a bit of a difficulty on the communication, or cultural, or just the goals, or the way of training, or so it's important that the coach knows how to transmit the information to the player, as well as the player asks the coach what do they need. We also help tennis players to navigate in the sports career. Here, what I'm trying to say is sometimes you start playing tennis when you're 3, 4, 5, 6 years old, and it's just what you do, right? You just go and play tennis, then you start playing tournaments, then you start seeing that you're getting good at it. Then you might have the option of, oops, sorry. I'm just being interrupted by my email. Give me 1 second. Okay, sorry about that. So yeah, I was saying that you have in the mind that maybe I want to go to uni and play some tennis, or maybe I want to. I'm having this problem again. Okay. I hope it doesn't happen again. But well, if it happens, sorry. I'm having some technical issues.
Hey, Elena, just keep on going. We can still see the screen, so just keep on
sorry,
going.
can you see my email popping in?
No, we can't see your email, so just keep on going.
Oh, okay.
Perfect.
Okay. I thought you were able to see my emails just popping in. Okay. Let me go back to the presentation. Yeah. So yeah, go back to, I want to go to uni, or I want to become a professional tennis player, and yeah, we just help them to have that clear goal on what's best for them, or what to do. Or sometimes the agents, sponsors come on board, and it's also important and interesting to help them with that, as well as to create a vision for success. In like, what is success for the tennis player, what does it mean, and how to make that a reality. We also help, and this is I'm really passionate about, to be in the zone, to be in the flow state. So how an athlete can be more and more in that zone, how they can focus and be the best version of themselves, which is basically what happens when you are in the flow state. Another that I work a lot, and this is more with junior players, is to manage their time efficiently, because they still working on school and tennis in a very high, normally in a high intensity, so they train almost every day, with also strength and conditioning tournaments every other weekend. So knowing how to manage your time is key, and not only for school, it's also for tennis and for life, because then if it happens that they become professional tennis players, it's really, really important to really manage your time efficiently, as well as to be resilient, which is to bounce back from setbacks, right? And also in driving you to play tennis, because this is also something that I experience and I see, that many players and normally happens in junior time, like when you're 15, 16, 17 years old, that you start seeing that your friends that are not tennis related, they start to do things that you want to do and you cannot do, or you're not interested anymore because you were motivated by I want to please my parents, or external motivations, which are called that are result based, and we help them to also think about what are your internal motivations. Are you really playing tennis? Because that's also what is going to help them to keep going. Tennis is a very tough sport. It's not easy. There's a lot of competition, as you know, and what is going to help you to every day go wake up, go training, go to school, go to that tournament, you don't go through the first round, what is going to keep me moving and keep me growing and become my best version. So that's really, really important. Also, as I think we were talking with Fabio about this, about how to manage stress or pressure from external, are in that important moment of our career, and we have to know that I should have to do this. That's also key of that added pressure that we normally do. And then what is success? How to handle that? What now we're seeing more and more younger players winning Grand Slams, and sometimes that can be a problem. On okay, what's next? And it's just, you don't play just tennis now. You have to deal with the press, sponsors, interviews. There are so many things, and here again, time management is so important, and also this part of expectations of success, of our why we're playing tennis. And how do we work? See, now with this current situation that we are going through, we have to work a lot online. So I've been working online for years. It's not a problem. Also in tennis, as you know, they are traveling all the time, so it's perfect for them to have someone on FaceTime or WhatsApp, and to be like kind of approachable in that way. But it's also very important to see them during a practice or a competition, so we get a lot of information. Sometimes, obviously, nowadays it's not possible, but we can see recordings or we can see videos of the matches. So it's important that we see their performance. This is something that I work with around this graph, and for me is key as well for my practice, which is all the areas that are not just because we say, okay, I'm a tennis player. I train from 9 to 5, from I don't know, 9 to 12, and then from 3 to 5, I do some strength and conditioning coach, and that's it. But how do you eat? How many hours do you sleep, and the quality of your sleep? What do you do outside tennis? What's your lifestyle? How healthy you are? How do you recharge? How is that energy that you're using, giving, or how, as I said, you're recharging, your mental well-being, the recovery, which is so important. That I heard so many tennis players, I always forget to stretch. Well, yeah, I do sometimes the warm-up, not always, and the cool down, I don't have time. So all these areas are key to be your best version, not only what you do on court. So we work on court, as I was we are on a tennis club, and we see the tennis player practicing on court with their coach. That's what we think is all about. But there's more, and this is something that I will share after. But when the player is on court, there's a lot of mental work that they can do. Obviously, we design it on the sessions that we talk about it. The player talks, for example, about the last tournament. So we talk about the obstacles, for example, they face, or things that he or she thought that they wanted to improve, or there's working on a specific shot that is difficult and they're not struggling to make it happen. So we will work on that on court. So, for example, some types of mental exercises that a tennis player can do on court can be the famous routines, right? It's like, okay, there are so many types of routines, but it can be a pre-match. It can be a post-match routine. It can be, as you know, routine of your serve, between points, when you change events, when you're receiving, second serve. So many different moments where you can create a routine. And for me, it's also important that, because this is something that already coaches implement or they ask the players to do, but sometimes the player just do it because of the fact of doing it. But it's important to understand why you're doing that routine, why it's important, why you have to make that single routine every single practice and not just when things are going well. Because this is also something that I see a lot. It's like, yeah, I've done my routine of the serve, but then on the second serve, I normally forget. Or when I'm on a match point, I tend to rush, or on a tie break, there's nothing. I just want to finish that point. So those routines are totally forgotten. And it's very, very important to establish your routines and also make them yours, not someone else. Or you've seen someone on TV making this or that. Just it's important that you make your own routine. There's another tool, which is the level of activation, which is also an important one, which is also something that probably people that are listening to, they feel related. It's like, oh, I felt a bit tense today and I didn't feel my shots as normal, or I was a bit more nervous, or yeah, today I was not feeling the same as I normally do. So that's normally related with that level of activation, which we all have an optimal level of activation. That is when we are a bit activated, not too relaxed, and we are focused, present, and we are ready to go. So we work also on helping the athlete to understand which is that level of activation that works for them. Breathing techniques. This is also a good one, important one. We take for granted breathing, and now more and more our research that helps you to understand the importance of that breathing. It's like how important, is to inhale and exhale. Why it's important is important for this, for example, to reduce or increase that level of activation. It can be also important to tell our brain, hey, everything is fine, don't panic. We are in control. It helps you to relax. So it's very important to do it, for example, in that routine and when you're bouncing the ball on the serve. So yeah, breathing techniques. This is something that I work with strength and conditioning coaches, or I have some knowledge, but it's really, really interesting. Also, body awareness. What is that? It's like, obviously, it's knowing and listening to our bodies. For example, sometimes a player goes to physio and say, okay, how was that? How is your body feeling? Oh, I have some niggles, or I have some tension, but they are not really aware where is that happening, or the most important, how they create that. And that's a little bit of we sum up that tension until we have that niggle, we have that soreness. But if we are really knowing our body, if we really know how to prevent the tension, it is also very important for our performance. So knowing how we're feeling is key. Then we have keywords. We have in Spain, as you know, thanks to Rafa, a very important keyword, which is vamos. And now a lot of players use it, and that's the importance of that keyword. What does vamos mean? It's like, come on, it's like we are just bringing that level of activation. How we are just raising our awareness to be on the present. We are just telling ourselves, come on, next point. So having different keywords during the match is also a good tool to practice, as well as managing emotions. This is something that I normally work with younger tennis players, because unfortunately I think in schools they don't teach us much about emotions. And then obviously when we are in stressful situation, or we are like really competitive and we want to make things happen, or we get frustrated, all those emotions can arise, and we don't know, we don't understand why they're coming and why we are getting upset, or why I'm bouncing my racket on the floor, why I'm crying on court. So understanding first our emotions, and then knowing how to prevent them from maybe happening, or to managing them, is also a really good tool for younger players. Being present. This is, I think, the golden nugget for every single athlete, right? Is everyone wants to be present. We tend to have our mind going to the past and in the future. We're thinking about the last point, or we're thinking about how to close this, the next point. So we are kind of going back and forth in time, and we forget about what's happening right now. So being present is a very, very important tool, as well as how to be focused and how to reduce the noise, right? And to be in that bubble that sometimes, if we are in a very noisy environment, or a club that we can hear there's a lot of echo, or people around, we can always lose that focus of attention. And so really knowing how to refocus is important. Body language is something that for me is very, it can be fun, and it can be like something that you can also practice off court, but and this is something that we see if we are watching a tennis match, and we just jump into it. We don't know how the score is going. We know who's winning or who's losing just by looking at the body language. So as sports psychologists, we do a lot of observation, And the first thing we see obviously is that body language. What are we telling with our body, with our actions, with what we're saying? So working on that, it can give you a lot of advantage for yourself and also for the opponent. And also that coachability, how much are we listening to our coaches? How much are we learning? How much are we battling against our inner critics that are telling ourselves you are not doing it right when your coach is telling you that that was great? So being coachable is quite obviously important to keep growing as an athlete. And then we have some work outside court, which I call it invisible training. So it's like what most of the people don't see, but it's as important as what happens on court. So what type of work is that? Mindfulness is now a very popular one. There are more and more apps popping in, and we see NBA players practicing mindfulness, Formula One ones, tennis players, like it's getting like really mainstream. And it's not just of a trend, it's because it really works. That's one of the first things I recommend also tennis players is download Headspace or download Calm in your phone and put in your headphones while you commute, while you are waiting for the playing the next match, while you're waiting at an airport. There are so many moments where the player is just waiting. So having a mindfulness session and practicing that every day is going to help you loads, because what does mindfulness do is just quiets our head. It takes the noise, is help us to identify when our inner critic is coming, when we are judging ourselves, right? When we are not present, as I was saying before, we are just thinking about, okay, what happened last point, how I'm going to do that the next, or you're just looking at everyone around you, but not what is happening. So if you practice mindfulness, that will be easier to just zoom in. Relaxation techniques. This is something that the athlete can practice themselves, but we as sports psychologists also help them to do. This is really helpful before a match. We tend to get a little bit stressed, a bit more tense. So knowing how to relax your body is going to be a powerful tool, as well as I said before, those breathing exercises that you can practice outside court as well. I also recommend yoga. Now more and more athletes are practicing yoga, and this is something that I have been also during this lockdown. A lot of different athletes that I've been talking with, they told me, hey, I just started yoga and I love it. Mostly men, which was really, really nice to hear. And yeah, it's not only about the flexibility, it's about learning how to breathe, it's about listening to your body, it's about being present, it's about being mindful. So if you give it a chance, it's a really good extra activity to do with your tennis. This is not proper tool, but time of tennis is very, very important. Is for me is key that every player has time off, that they forget about tennis players and they just do something totally different, and that's a way of recharging. Journaling, this is also something that I'm seeing more and more so on Instagram of some tennis players, that they're just writing down their thoughts, reflections, intentions of how they want to see the day, Some people like writing, some people don't. If you like writing, I will recommend you to practice that one. Video analysis is something that normally players do with coaches, but they can do also with the sports psych. Just talking about what I was discussing before about the body language. So I help the player to see themselves not as a tennis player, but just how I see the player. I don't check the technique or tactic. I see that what are they saying, what's the behavior. So I teach them on how to see that and how to improve and or change if there's something that needs to be done like that. Then a popular one is visualization, which is basically imagining ourselves performing something as we wanted to. So this is quite interesting, for example, to see in Formula One drivers. They take the wheeler and they start moving with they close their eyes and they start moving through the whole circuit in their head. It happens also with climbers. Every single sport can do their visualization in their way. But in tennis, it's just, for example, if you're working on your serve, you can visualize how does that look, how do you want to see it, or if you want to, even you can visualize a whole set. So it's an interesting tool to use because you are already telling to your mind how to do something, and you will gain time for when you're practicing in real time. And then also there are some other things as socializing or studying that can help to recharge and disconnect. When do we do interventions? Not only in practice and competition, as I'm talking, is also very important to work on injuries and retirement. Sometimes during injuries, the athlete says, oh, I don't need anything, I just need to recover and that's it. But there's a lot of work that can be done also to help with the injury, and also there's more time because they're traveling less, or they're not traveling, or they're just, yeah, they can use that time for work on the mental. And also retirement is, unfortunately, athletes retire quite early, and there's another stage for them to work and to plan, and we also help them with this. And that's it. Sorry, it took me, I think, more than expected. I'm sorry about my technical issues. I hope it didn't bother too much.
Hi, Elena.
But yeah, Fabio, I'm here.
That was great. You may just want to let me see here. Unshare your screen.
I'm just. I was just a bit wondering if is people seeing all my emails.
No, nobody saw your emails. Not that I didn't see any, so I don't think the other people saw them. But thank you very much for coming in, explaining a bit about what you do. And there's a lot going on there. And I can see why it's a full-time job. And I can see why people like yourself travel with players, and there's a lot going on. You're dealing with a lot of things on and off the court. So thank you very much. I have loads of questions. Okay. But let's go to Keane, and he'll ask some of the questions that have been left by people. And that's what's important here. So fire away, Keane. And thank you very much, Elena.
Okay, let's get straight into it then, because we have a full house, so we'll just jump straight in. First question is from Oliver. Oliver actually asked this question beforehand. He says, at what age should players be attending junior tournaments by themselves in order to try and create a sense of self-confidence for themselves?
Well, that's depends, I guess, on the player. Some players can be quite confident to travel by themselves, and they have done it before. Or maybe they have a group of people that they can travel with, or a coach that travels with them. So I don't think there is a specific age that they can they say, okay, at 15 years old, 16 years, it depends on the maturity also of the athlete. But it's always a good thing if they can do it with coaches or with more players. It's always a good way of them to feel confident and to own that part of their sport.
Okay, awesome. We have one here from Noor. Which is more important, pre-match, during match, or post-match mental preparation?
I think all of them. There is no more or less important. Because they all have a meaning, right? It's like, okay, the pre-match preparation is like, okay, we can work on visualization or intentions of or my game plan, a mental game plan. And then during the match, when I'm going to use my mental tools, and then after the match, is like also observation and evaluation, talking with your coach, talking with the mental coach if you have, but also to observe and not judge. So there, I think all those 3 stages are important to really give them the importance that they have.
Okay, awesome. We have a question here from Alexandra. Maybe you'll be able to answer this one, Elena. If not, there's no problem. Is there any useful readings for parents on the role in an athlete's life? So if the athlete is their kid, and I know in the Agassi book he talks about like a dominant presence from a parent and a lot of pressure. Just wondering if you've any other recommendations there.
There are many. There are movies. I don't have anyone right now in particular. There's a kind of an interesting movie that is called, I think, The Short Game, that is specific of golf and talks about different type of parents. But I think as a parent, it's important to talk to your kid, talk to your coach, and try to understand. And as I said, just support them emotionally and just being parents. And the coach will do their job. And what does the kid want? It's just the parents to cheer them and just to encourage them and just to embrace those small victories or big victories and keep pushing them, right?
I have a question here. You know the way we always talk about anything, anytime we talk about something mental, we talk about a stigma or a shame associated with it. Do you think the same applies to sports psychologists?
Well, unfortunately, we still have that kind of stigma, now less and less. And I think thanks to social media, we are seen in a positive way, and more athletes are talking about the mental work. For me, also the intention of this webinar is to normalize our job and our work that we do with athletes, and like, hey, what you think is only happening to you is happening to everyone that is practicing a sport. So it's also to normalize that, and working with a sports psychologist is just going to add you, and it's going to help you to be the best version of yourself.
Yeah, I'm sure there's a certain amount of maturity that comes whenever you're with a sports psychologist anyway. But we have a question here from Gregory. Is there a technique to calm down when you feel frustrated during a match?
Breathing. I think that's the most important one. And it's the most effective. Obviously there are more, but knowing how to breathe, deep breaths, breathing with your nose, expanding all your chest, all that, the stomach, all that area where there are a lot of nerves, just relax in that area. You're going to feel that the body is just calming down, or sometimes listening to your heartbeat, or listening to some chill music that is going to, or visualizing. So, but breathe, if it's one, I would recommend breathing.
Can I just jump in here? Elena, you may just want to turn on your video first of all. I think.
I was just texting you, Claudio, because I can't.
That's okay. No, that's okay.
It says that the host has to let me do it.
Okay, well, I'll try to figure that. We'll see what's going on. But a question for you: when somebody comes to see you for the first time, let's say they make an appointment, what do you go through with a player the first time they come and see you?
Well, first thing is for me is talking with them and knowing. Okay, now I can start the video. Sorry. So I first have a first interview with the athlete or parents, and just to know, okay, what do you want to work on, and so they also know what are they going to work with me, and just to have kind of some ideas of, yeah, I'm as I said, oh, I'm getting upset on court, or I get too nervous. So when they know and they identify that, and then I explain them what I do, a bit what I, in a way of how I did it today, and just making them feel comfortable, because it's normal. Everything that I never heard anything like, wow, that's never happened to anyone. It's like normal situations that not many people talk about, but everyone goes through them. And there's tools that you can add to your toolbox that you can use. Obviously, the most important part is that the athlete is committed. We don't do magic, unfortunately. So we cannot do the whole work. There is a lot of work that the athlete needs to do on court and outside court. That's why it's important also this webinar to explain, like, there's a lot of things you can do on court, but also there's a lot of things you have to do also outside court.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we'll jump straight back into it then. This isn't a question that was actually asked, but Elena, you worked with Joe Konta for a bit specifically during a run at Wimbledon. Are you able to just tell us maybe, just generally, you don't have to go into specifics here, but maybe just what sort of techniques you talked about, or how often you talked with her, or something like that?
Yeah, with Johanna, I was traveling with her. I was going not to all of the tournaments, but some of them. I was observing loads of her training sessions, and yeah, as you know, she's a player that I think is one of the first players that talk about the mental work that she was doing, and for her is still priority and very, very important work. So yeah, it was part of her, like the mental work. What she also had very clear what was she wanted to work on, so it was quite easy to work with her, because she for me was an advanced athlete, and very, very good to work with, because she knew exactly, okay, this is what I want to work on. And I was working with the whole team, with her coach, heating partner, strength and conditioning, agent partner. So it was a big team, and yeah, at the end you have to talk to everyone. And that's not only with her. I work with other professional tennis players, and you at the end and talking with everyone, because they all influence in one way or another.
And actually, we have a question here from Katrina, and I can actually link it back into what you just said there. Do people, or when you talk to the whole team, do you talk to them all individually? Do you take some of them in groups? How does that work?
Yeah, it depends on what, but there are team meetings that are important so everyone is on the same page. If there is any specific topic that, for example, I'm working with a player and it's relevant for everyone, I will talk at the same time with everyone. But if there is something in particular that, for example, the strength and conditioning coach doesn't need to be involved, so then I will go just one-to-one. So it depends on what. But yeah, it's quite hands-on. At the end, you talk with a lot of people.
Yeah, no, I can imagine a lot going on there. We have a question here from Hector. Great presentation. He loves the presentation. He's teaching his brother how to play, and he's not improving at the level that he would expect to, or his brother would like to. Do you have any ways of trying to encourage him so he doesn't feel down or think negatively?
Well, here's related with that internal motivation. It's like, okay, why are you playing tennis? And understanding what's that drive and why you're doing what you're doing. Is we tend to always look about results, ranking, winning, and it's not only about that. If we focus only on that results, we're going to get very frustrated. We are going to not enjoy the sport, and we want to give up because we obviously we cannot win every single match. So there's something else there that we have to look into it and say, okay, what's the purpose of all this? It's like, oh, I want to just become, and this is something that Nadal says every time he's interviewed, is I want to be the best player today that I was yesterday, and I want to just improve every day. So he has a really process mindset that is called, and that's what also helps him to keep moving and not get frustrated, because it's not only about results. Obviously we see it's not about results, about Nadal.
We have a question here from Maria, and she's talking about the Pro Tour, and it says, how do you deal with depression and anxiety and still have to play tournaments, or how can you balance that? But I guess this would apply to anybody. Tennis is a game where you kind of, the schedule is very packed, and you need to be playing a lot, and sometimes it can become just a bit overwhelming, I guess. So
yeah,
you come across
I can see that, because now some players are with the A levels, and they have to travel every weekend, and they have to make so many essays, and so time management is so key here. It's like really managing your time, eating the elephant in small parts. I always say it's like you cannot get everything at the same time. So really managing and setting every day, okay, what do I need to do today, and taking that time off. If you don't really take time off, you're going to burn out. So you really need to do something that is not tennis, that is not school. Go out with your friends, go and see a movie, just chill, but really invest in that time, because that's going to help you to keep going.
We have a question from Bruno. What can we do if players want, or if parents want the player to succeed more than the player actually does themselves, or the player and their coach wants to do? So if it's a really dominant personality for the parent.
Yeah, this is it's normal. It happens. I've been there. So here we, as coach, obviously you have to make them understand the importance of growing, of that process of help them. Something that works for me a lot. If okay, let's help the player to be responsible. Let's help the player to take actions. Let's help the player think for themselves, because sometimes with that type of parent, they give them everything to the kid. They make them everything for the kid. And then that kid is a junior player and doesn't know how to make a tennis bag. They doesn't know how to scout a kid. It doesn't know how to have a game plan. So it can lead to a problem. So we really need to calm the parents and say, okay, it's not about you, it's about your kid, right? And deal with that. It's not easy, and it can, so it depends also on the parent and the specific case.
Sure. We have a question here from Lena. Lena's a psychology student, and she's just wondering, how did you get into tennis?
Just by I don't know. It was I started working in tennis, and then it's a small world, and I just work in tennis right now. So I love the sport. I love individual sports, and also our work, unfortunately, normally comes from sports where there is more money: football, basketball, golf, tennis, so where people can really afford it. Sometimes with minor sports, they don't have so much, the federations, or sometimes the parents, they don't have that budget, so our figure doesn't appear.
We have another question, plenty more questions to go, see how far we can go on this. We have one from Dave Smith. Should each player be actually developing their own rituals, or should they be trying to copy Rafa or Serena or whoever it may be?
I think it's important that they have their own. Yeah, they can say, okay, I bounce the ball 4 times, or I don't know, having like Nadal, Rafa can be a bit trickier, but it's important that they own, this is my routine, it's not someone else's routine. They can admire Rafa, they can admire Serena, they can say, okay, I want to be or get inspired by that player. But the more they own, they make it them, theirs, it will be also easier for them to stick into that routine.
Tennis is a sport where you lose a lot of points. Often there's very little difference between the number of points won in a match. How do you help players strengthen their tolerance of frustration because they're going to lose a lot of points?
Yeah, and this is a given in tennis, right? It's about focusing on those little victories. For me, it's also something that I repeat a lot to the player. Okay, what was your victory today in this loss? To look at the bigger picture, to look how important this match is going to be in your future or this tournament. Sometimes also to take a little bit of that. Yeah, we think that it's everything that much, but how much that is going to impact in your career. So try to detach a little bit emotionally from it and always look at the winners. And if you had done a horrible performance, just think about what happened there. But I'm sure there's always something that you can take.
How many times a day or a week, or how often would you actually speak with someone if you are working with them as a sports psychologist?
Normally once a week, but when they are in tournaments, can be more.
Justin says, what's the best way to find a good sports psychologist?
Normally recommendations. If you know someone that worked with someone that helped, it can be, but at the end it's very personal because you have to connect with that person, with the sports psychologist. You have to feel comfortable talking with them, and because you're going to talk a lot about different things. So you have a first interview and see if you connect, and if it clicks, go for it.
Question, can I just jump in here? Like you're a great sports psychologist, there's great sports psychologists all over the world and players all over the world. So do you have to see a player in person, or can you work with a sports psychologist like through Zoom calls, Skype, WhatsApp?
Yeah.
Is that okay?
Yeah, nowadays it's trickier now to travel. For me, I like to see the player, but I know that sometimes it's not possible. And sometimes I work with players that I never seen physically. And that's okay. Now we have Zoom, we have recordings, now YouTube live streams so many tournaments. So it can happen, and it cannot be a problem.
Okay, thanks.
We have another question here about building confidence. Young 9-year-old child, very shy, and I know this is sometimes related to age. They're very shy and they kind of grow into themselves. But any tips on building confidence for a player so they can be more confident within themselves?
I think it's important that the player sits down and write down what are your superpowers. And you have playing tennis, if you're enjoying it, I'm sure you're good at something, and invest time in that, because that's going to bring your confidence up, and you're going to focus on those positives and where you want to be, and not on all the things that you think you don't have.
Talking about stress, I know you talked about breathing. Is there any other way of trying to de-stress? Say if you go through a bit of a bad period in a match, you lose a few games, maybe you're broken. Any other tips besides from breathing?
Routines here can help, because it's going to help you to focus on just specific thing. Sometimes also on what's the next plan, my next move. Having a clear game plan can also help to refocus, because when we are stressed, we think about, as I said, past or future, and we forget about what to do, and we can panic and we forget about everything. So having a clear plan, it can also help to refocus, and obviously if there's tension in your body, breathing, and sometimes just jumping and going from one place to another from the court is going to help also to release some body tension.
How important do you think the mental game is in tennis compared to the physical game?
They are both as important: technical, tactical, mental, strategy, all of them. There's not, sometimes I heard, oh, everything is mental. It's not true. They all go together. So there's always something that you can do to balance that. So yeah, sometimes that tension comes because maybe you're not moving your legs properly, or maybe because you're not quick enough, or so I think they're all, there's no more or less important.
And we have just one last question for you because I don't see any more coming in. I'll ask it and then I'll give it back to Fabio. We see Denis Shapovalov working with sports psychologists recently a lot. He's meditating on the changeovers. Is it something you've ever seen before, come across, or recommended?
Yeah, it's a quick. You see players putting the towel on top of the head. Sometimes it's just breathing or just looking on the sort. I don't know, somewhere. It can help. It's just short meditation, breathing, and just focusing on the present. That's about it. There's no more about that, and it is very powerful.
Awesome. Hey, I'll give you back to Fabio then, Elena.
Just one more question there, Cian, from Div.
There is a question just came in from Div. I have a 9-year-old who's a good player. He gets quite angry during matches. He's kind of playing people above his ages, and he doesn't always put in the effort. Is there any way of dealing with that lack of effort on the court, trying to motivate people to really give it their all?
Yeah, well, if he's playing older players, maybe he can get frustrated because at that age, physically, you can notice the difference. Sometimes they can be taller, quicker, stronger. So that can lead into loss of frustration, more in boys. And that level of effort is, I think it's important to have that plan with their kid before, okay, it's not about results, it's about performance, it's about attitude. So having a clear process plan that is not result based, because I guess that the kid is quite focused on results, winning, losing, and that's what leads to all that. So it's about changing the attention into that.
Oh, and we do actually have one last question. Now that I say it, everyone's coming in. We have one from Nicholas, on court and off court personalities. Do you tend to see that people play the same way as they are, or that they're totally different? What's your view on that?
That's a good one, because sometimes I help athletes to build a different identity on court. Sometimes you can have a quiet introvert or some shy, as we said, like some people that are, but on court they build that identity and they're totally different. So it can be good, and this is a work that I really enjoy doing. It's about that brand of who are you on court, so you can work on your body language, you can work on how do you play, you can work on what are you telling to yourself on that game style. So there are so many things that you can work on that identity on court, that they don't really need to be also what happens outside court. Sometimes you hear like people screaming and getting angry, and then outside court they're totally the opposite. So, yeah.
Do you think the parent-coach dynamic is healthy? Obviously, there's been some successful cases, Williams, Wozniacki, Tsitsipas. Do you think that's a healthy dynamic to have? And do you think it's hard to draw the line on where that boundary is? If you're sitting down for dinner, are you talking tennis or are you talking normal school life?
Yeah, that's I had some players that they have that situation. I think communication here is key, and really identifying those roles, and then there's a fluent communication, that the parent knows when is he a coach and when he is a dad, and also the player. So I think it has to be a lot of talking and a lot of communication between them, so they know what to do and when, and definitely not tennis on dinner time if possible.
Question here from Ken. We see pro players reading notes at changeovers. Do you think they're tactics or motivational pointers? Do you think they're inspirational quotes they're reading? What do you think's going on there?
Well, they some of them, they take their notes and they just read maybe what's next, what's the game plan, or just they can have like a keyword sometimes. They just do that, as we said, like that breathing and just being present. Sometimes they're just thinking about the Netflix show that they saw last day. So we don't really know, but obviously it's a minute that changeover, so you can really use that minute in a very productive way. So use it wisely.
Do you find that if a player is really calm, cool, collected, like Bjorn Borg, or if they're really like fired up, really energetic? Do you find that whenever you're talking with them, maybe you have to try and push them towards maybe to calm down a bit, or maybe to get a bit more fired up on the court? Or is it something that you just leave be, that's their personality, and you just leave it be?
Yeah, you don't really want to change that. It's at the end, depending on the age, if they are already like developed and they're adults, that's their identity. So keep embracing that, right? Sometimes we see that they want to change something that is quite powerful. So why do we want to change that? So it depends on the age, obviously, and also if it's helping them or not. But that fireness or being more or less activated is, if it's not really affecting their performance, don't change it.
Question.
Yeah.
We talk a lot about getting, not going from being really fired to calming down is what, how do you calm down? But what about if you're a player who plays the best when they're pumped and, you know, how do you, and they're quite a relaxed player, but they need to get into that mind state of being, you know, energetic and fiery. How do you bring somebody from just being calm to getting fired?
Well, here's it's related to what I was saying, the level of activation. Sometimes with with the breath, as the breath can calm us down and can also activate us. If we start breathing quicker, it's going to bring us more moving on court. If we start jumping, if we start talking to ourselves in a really motivated way, that's going to help us to really pump us up. And also in the other way. So depending on why we need to do that. So, but it's easy. Well, it's easy if you practice, but it can be done to change that level of activation from being here to being here.
Okay, it's good. One more. We'll take another last question, Cian, and then we'll wrap this up.
Okay, we'll take the last question. Let me find one here. Yeah, we have one here from Oleg. What do you think about hypnosis combined with coaching? Do you think you can get straight to the root faster, or have you ever used this technique?
I haven't, so I'm not an expert on hypnosis, so I cannot really answer to him. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's fair enough. We wouldn't want you saying stuff that you don't feel comfortable saying. So no problem at all. And we'll pass it back to Fabio then.
Okay, Elena, thank you very much for
thank
that.
you.
You said, just a question, are the top athletes that you've worked with, are they all really heavily goal orientated?
They all have goals. I think is different result and goals. You have to have a goal. You have to know where you want to go. How do you want to feel? It's different, obviously, to say, okay, I want to win a Grand Slam, then I want to be on between the 150 and 250 ranking, or I want to be the best version, and I want. So there are different ways, but there is always a part of results and goals. And if there's not goals, we will work in that at the same time with the coach. But yeah, they are goal orientated. I think that's a good way, a good mindset.
Great. Okay. Well, thank you very much. Thanks to all the
Thank
viewers
you
for tuning in and for Elena's great presentation. What I'll do is I'll send an email to everybody afterwards with a recording of this. We'll also link to Elena's Instagram if you want to give her a follow. Maybe if you have other questions, you can follow up directly with her. But
Yeah.
this is our third webinar, and next week, or sorry, in 2 weeks' time, we're going to have a doubles webinar, and then 2 weeks after that, we're going to have a US college webinar, and we haven't planned after that, though we have a few more people lined up. So changing it up every few weeks and trying to get as many people involved. Some people did say about the time zone. I think once we do a few more, we'll try to get some in different time zones just to suit more people around the world, because our audience is quite international. So thanks again. Thanks to Cian, moderator, for the questions. Super thanks to Elena.
Thank you so much. I really enjoyed it. I will keep answering questions. So yeah, if more people have questions, please drop me a message or an email, and I will be more than happy.
Great. Okay. Thank you very much. And goodbye, everybody, until the next one. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.